Today we're going to be talking about the situation between Logan Paul, Mike Malak, and George Janko. I'm a little late to this, but it interests me regardless. Now, a few months ago, don't know if any of you saw, but George Janko walked off the Impulsive podcast during an interview with Bobby Lee.
There was certain. He is clocked out.
I know. George has been under a tremendous amount of abuse. No, stop, George. I want you over here with me. George, I want you over here with me. Chase him down. Go. You find him. George, no, go get him. Go get him. I said this, he walked, and that's a first, and now we're going to have to deal with the fallout of this episode for the next 2 months. I swear to God, Bobby Lee, you've pissed off my co-host.
Now, Bobby Lee is famously a comedian who says some risky things. Many people already know the third seed in that podcast is incredibly difficult. Just the positioning, It's hard, Bobby Lee had his back turned to George most of the podcast, but it's not out of malice. Clearly, he's just trying to have a conversation with Logan and Mike. They asked him a question, he looks at them when he's responding. George behaved rather unprofessionally by walking off in that podcast. He admits it himself, he apologizes himself. However, a few days later, Logan and George get into a heated argument on the topic of religion.
We pick on each other and other things, it's totally fine. Like you suck at comedy, I get that. Everybody knows that. All that stuff. But when it comes to religion, you have to tiptoe.
No, I don't.
Well, I do with anybody. And by the way, you brought up like Muslims and Jews. Dude, I sit at synagogues and talk to rabbis all the time, pick their brains. I sit with Muslim people. They're most peaceful people. We went to Saudi Arabia.
Right? I want you to say it right now.
Who's right?
Whose God is real?
My God is real in my eyes.
Not Allah.
George isn't supporting this religion for its badness. Not many people do. Realistically, the argument went too far, and so did Logan. George shouldn't have to defend himself for his beliefs. If he believes in God, then so be it. Sorry I'm a greasy, sweaty mess. It's just ridiculously hot, and there's no air conditioning where I come from. Just none. I'd like to see you try and find some. The internet got involved, as always, as they always do, and elevated the scenario to new levels. Logan and George have another podcast talking about the situation, apologizing to each other.
The bottom of my heart, I'm sorry.
I appreciate that.
My attitude towards you on that episode and my belittlement of your beliefs was not appropriate at all. Not as a podcast host, especially not as a friend. I had made the mistake of assuming that the part represents the whole in terms of the intolerance that does exist in your religion. Every Christian I know, pretty much, is incredibly warm, loving, accepting, and forgiving, including my devout mother. And I also recognize that it's a source of so much hope and purpose for people, and it was wrong to be dismissive of that.
However, George does not appear on the podcast any further. In fact, even sometimes being replaced by a Prime bottle wearing headphones. George has not returned to the podcast since, which is a little unfortunate, given he's been friends with Logan for a long time. However, I don't believe they're not friends. And I don't believe they're arguing. My personal belief is that this whole scenario may just be a PR stunt. Now you're probably thinking I'm being ridiculous, conspiracy theory bullshit, right? Let me tell you why I believe this. What the fuck? What in the absolute fuck is going on here then? 62.5% of you aren't subscribed. Yes, you. How could you live like this for so long? Subscribe now. Alright, so halfway through editing this video, I realized that the recording cuts off for absolutely no reason right as I begin to explain the title of the video. Now the title's probably something clickbaity, something like, oh, Logan Paul lied to us again, you know, given everything that's happened with CryptoZoo over the last little while. A vast majority of the world follow some religion or another. Logan's insulted that in a close friend of his. He's insulted it on the reg. He's insulted it many times, except one of these times he pushed it too far. George has been feeling out of place, very clearly, in this podcast. He's like the third wheel, even when there's 4 people. When there's 4 people, it's very hard to be that third wheel. Mike has been very empathetic toward him, and Logan has been at some points as well. We have to give it to him. However, I don't believe this situation is as serious and as deep as people think it is. I think it's a PR stunt. Very strange circumstance that not long after George leaves the Impulsive podcast, he starts his own. However, he has earned some money off of this podcast, and earned money off of using the fact that him and Logan are arguing in his thumbnail. Now, do I think he's right to do so? Absolutely. He's 100% within his right. He spent enough time with Logan to have an opinion on what Logan says and what Logan does, and especially when it involved him. But do I think Logan doesn't want him to? Absolutely not. In my opinion, both Impulsive and George have both independently succeeded from this drama. If anything, I think it distracts from the real problem, the people who've been robbed. Now, personally, I don't know if Logan is to blame for the scam. I don't know if anyone does, because he hasn't come out with his side of the story. I don't think he can, especially if he's taking legal action. If he's taking legal action, he could be under NDA. Might not be able to say any of these things. I hope that's the case, honestly, because if it is the case, then he can come out with all the information as to why he hasn't paid. He can pay, and he can dig himself out of this hole. It's not a hole he can't dig himself out of. It's very easy. He has the money. He's just not doing it. Mike or Logan may come out and explain the situation further. Who knows? Maybe I'm completely wrong. We'll just have to find out. Well, regardless, whatever you believe, let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. If you want to see more videos like this, please go back into the channel. I've got plenty. Subscribe for more. And as always, no rest for the wicked. I also have to do the best comment that I got. I mentioned doing that in another video, I think. Ooh, I got this one. This was a good one. It was in response to my Vidal Riley versus Tommy Fury video. At Isaac Goodall 6153 says, Vidal would absolutely maul Tommy Fury. To which I put a big like button on. Big one of these bad boys. These. Yeah.